Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace, page 263. Pemulus has nothing left and is spasming dryly over the bucket. His covered Dunlop gut-struck sticks and gear tumble just past Stotts in the passage. They're the last guys to get out on court. Stott is to play 3 singles on the 18's B team, Pemulus 6B. They are undeniably tardy getting out there. Their opponents stand out on the baselines of courts 9 and 12, waiting for them to come out and warm up, jittery, stretching out the way you do when you've already just stretched out. Dribbling fresh, bright balls with their black Wilson wide-body sticks. The whole Port Washington Tennis Academy student body gets free and mandatory Wilson sticks under an administrative contract. Nothing personal, but no way would Stott let an academy tell him what brand of stick to swing. He himself favors headmasters, which is regarded as bizarre and eccentric. The AMF head rep brings them out to him out of some cobwebby warehouse, where they're kept since the line was discontinued during the large head revolution many years back. Aluminum headmasters have small, perfectly round heads and a dull blue plastic brace in the V of the throat, and looks less like weapons than toys. Coyle and Oxford are always kibitzing that they've seen a headmaster for sale at like a flea market or garage sale someplace, and Stott better get back there quick. Stott, who is historically tight with Mario and with Lyle, down in the weight room, where Stott, since the knee and the Crohn's disease, likes to go even on off days to work off discomfort. And Delint and Loach are always on him about not getting muscle-bound. Has a way of just smiling and holding his tongue when he's kibitzed. "Are you okay?" Pemulus says, "Bleh." He wipes at his forehead in a gesture of completion and submits to being hauled to his feet and stands there on his own, with his hands on his hips, slightly bent. Stott straightens and pulls some wrinkles out of the bandage around the brace on his knee. Take maybe another second. Wayne's already way up. Pemulus sniffs unpleasantly. How come this happens to me every time? This is not like me. Happens to people is all. This hunched, spurting pill guy is not any me I ever recognize. Stott gathers gear. Some people, their nerves are in their stomachs. Cisne, yard guard, lord, you. Stomach man. Teddy brother man, I'm never once hungover for a competitive thing. I take elaborate precautions. Not so much as a whippet. I'm always in bed the night before by 2300, all pink-cheeked and clean. As they pass the plastic window behind Court 2, Stott sees Hal and Candenza try to pass the servant volley guy with a Baroque sideways slice down the backhand side and miss just wide. House cards already flipped to 4. Stott gives a little toodaloo wave that Hal can't see to acknowledge. Pemulus is in front of him as they go down the cold passage. Hal's way up too, another victory for the forces of peace. Jesus, I feel awful, Pemulus says. Things could be worse. Expand on that, will you? This wasn't like that Atlanta stomach incident. We were enclosed here. No one saw. You saw that glass. Tish did, and Delind. It's all a silent movie down here. Nobody heard thing one. Our guys will think we were back here butting heads to get enraged or something, or we can tell them that I got a cramp. That was a freebie in terms of stomach incidents. Pemulus is a whole different person before competitive play. I'm fucking inept. Stadt laughs. You're one of the aptest people I know. Get off your own back. Never remember getting sick as a kid. Now it's like I make myself sick just from worrying about getting sick. Well then, there you go. Just don't think anything thoracic. Pretend you don't have a stomach. I have no stomach, Pemulus says. His head stays still when he talks, at least, negotiating the passage. He carries 4 sticks, a rough white PWTA locker room towel, an empty ball can full of high chlorine Long Island water, nervously zipping and unzipping the top stick's cover. Stadt only ever carries 3 sticks. His don't have covers on them. Except for Pemulus and Radar and Unwin and a couple of others who favor gut strings and really need protection, nobody at Enfield uses racket covers. It's like an anti-fashion statement. People with covers make a point of telling you they're valid and for gut. A similar point of careful non-pride is never having their shirts tucked in. Orthostes used to drill and cut off black jeans until Stitt had Tony Nwangi go over and scream at him about it. Each academy has its own style or anti-style. The PWTA people, more or less a de facto subsidiary of Wilson, have unnecessary light blue Wilson covers on all their courtside synthetic strung sticks and big red W stenciled onto their Wilson synth gut strings. You have to let your company of choice spray paint their logo on your strings if you want to be on their free list for sticks. Is the universal junior deal. Stadt's orange Gamma 9 synthetic strings have AMF Head Inc.'s weird Taoist paraboloid logo sprayed on. Pemulus isn't on Dunlop's free list, but gets the ETA stringer to put Dunlop's dot and circumflex trademark on all his stick strings as a kind of touchingly insecure gesture, in Stadt's opinion. I played your guy in Tampa 2 years ago, Pemulus says, sidestepping one of the old discolored drill balls that always litter passages behind indoor tarps. Name escapes. Something, says Stadt. Yet another nook. One of those names that starts with L. Mario and Candenza, in a pair of little Aldern Talat Kelps's ETA drill sweats, is lurching noiselessly some 10 meters behind them in the passage. His police lockup and head up camera'd. He's framing Stadt's back in a 3-cornered box with his thumbs and long fingers, simulating the view through a lens. Mario's been authorized to travel with the squad to the Whataburger Invitational for final footage for his short and upbeat annual documentary. Brief testimonials and light-hearted moments and behind-the-scenes shots and emotional moments on court, etc., that every year gets distributed to ETA alumni and patrons and guests at the pre-Thanksgiving fundraising exhibition and formal fete. Mari was wondering how you could get enough light back here in a tarp tunnel to film a tense, cold pre-match gladiatorial match behind an indoor tarp, carrying tennis rackets in your arms like an obscene bouquet, without sacrificing the dim and diffuse and kind of gladiatorially doomed quality figures in the dim passage. After Pemulus has mysteriously won, he'll tell Mario maybe a Merino 350 with a diffusion filter on some kind of overhead cable you could winch along behind the figures at about twice the focal length, or else use fast film and station the Merino at the tunnel's very start and let the figures' backs gradually recede into kind of a doomed mist of low exposure. I remember your guy as one big forehand. Nothing but slice off the back. His VAPs never varies. If you kick the serve over to the backhand, he'll slice it short. You can come in behind it at, will. Don't worry about your own guy, Stott says. Your guy's got zero imagination. And you've got an empty expanse where your stomach ought to be, remember. I am a man with no stomach. They emerge through flaps in the tarp, with hands upraised in slight apology to their opponents. Walk out onto the warmer courts, the slow green eraserish footing of indoor composite. Their ears dilate into all the sounds in the larger space. Gasps and thwops and pocks and sneaker squeaks. Pemulus's court is almost down in female territory. Court 13 to 24 are girls 18s A and B, all bobby ponytails and two-handed backhands and high-pitched grunts that if girls could only hear what their own grunt sounded like, they'd probably cut it off. Pemulus can't tell whether the very muffled applause way down up behind the gallery panel is sardonic applause at his finally appearing after several minutes of vomiting, or is sincerely for K.D. Coyle on Court 3, who's just smashed a sucker lob so hard it's bounced up and racked 3's tray of hanging lights. Except for some rubber in his legs, Pemulus feels stomachless and tentatively okay. This match is an all-out must-win for him in terms of the Whataburger. The infralit courts are warm and soft. The heaters bolted into both walls above the tarp's upper hem are the deep, warm red of little square suns. The Port Washington players all wear matching socks and shorts and tucked-in shirts. They look sharp, but effete. A mannequinish aspect to them. Most of the higher-ranked ETA students are free to sign on with different companies for no fees, but free gear. Coyle is Prince and Reebok, as is Trevor Axford. John Wayne is Dunlop and Adidas. Stott is Headmaster Sticks, but his own clothes and knee supports. Orthostis is Wilson and all-black Fila. Keith Freer is Fox Sticks in both Adidas and Reebok, until one of the two companies' NNE reps catches on. Trolsch is Spalding, and damn lucky to get that. Howling Condensa is Dunlop and lightweight Nike high tops. And an air stir-up brace for the dicky ankle. Shaw is Kennick Sticks and clothes from Takani's Big and Tall line. Pemulus's entrepreneurial vim has earned him complete freedom of choice and expense, though he's barred by Delind and Nwangi from shirts that mention the Sinn Féin or that extol Allston, Massachusetts in any way in competition. Before going back to the baseline and warming up ground strokes, Stott likes to take a little time, courtside, futzing around, hitting his head's frames against strings and listening for the pitch of bass tension, arranging his towel on the back of his chair, making sure his guards aren't still flipped from some previous match, etc. And then he prefers to sort of snuffle around his baseline for a bit, checking for dust bunnies of ball fuzz and little divots or ridges from cold weather heave, adjusting the brace on his ruined knee, putting his thick arms out, cruciform, and pulling them way back to stretch out the old pecs and cuffs. His opponent waits patiently, twirling his polybutylene stick. And when they finally start to hit around, the guy's expression is pleasant. Stott always prefers a pleasant match, one way or the other. He really doesn't care all that much whether he wins anymore, since first the Crohn's and then the knee at 16. He'd probably now describe his desire to win as a preference, nothing more. What's singular is that his tennis seems to have improved slightly in the 2 years since he stopped really caring. It's like his hard, flat game stopped having any purpose beyond itself and started feeding on itself and got fuller, looser, its ridges less jagged, though everybody else has been improving too, even faster, and Stott's rank has been steadily declining since 16, and the staff has stopped talking even about a top college ride. Stott's warmed to him, though, since the knee and the loss of any urge beyond the play itself, and treats himself now almost more like a peer than an experimental subject with something at stake. Stott is already in his heart committed to a dental career, and he even interns twice a week for a root specialist over at Nation Craniofacial Pain Foundation in East Enfield when not touring. It strikes Stott as odd that Pemulus makes such a big deal of stopping all substances the day before competitive play, but never connects the neurosthetic stomach to any kind of withdrawal or dependence. He'd never say this to Pemulus unless Pemulus asked him directly, but Stott suspects Pemulus is physically dream-dependent, preludent or attenuate or something. It's not his business. Stott, supposedly French-Canadian guy, is as broad as Stott, but shorter. His face dark, and with a kind of Eskimoid structure to it. At 18, his hairline recessed in the sort of way where you just know the kid's already got hair on his back. And he warms up with crazy spins, moony top off a western forehand and weird inside-out shit off a one-hand back, his knees dipping oddly whenever he makes contact with his follow-through full of the dancerly flourishes that characterize a case of nerves. A nervous spin artist can be eaten more or less for lunch. If you hit as hard as Stott does, and what Pemulus said is true, the guy's backhand is always sliced and lads shallow. Stott looks over at Pemulus's guy, a grunter with a moody profile and the storky look of recent puberty. Pemulus is looking oddly sanguine and confident. After a couple of minutes futzing with cans of water, rinsing out the oral cavity, and so on, Pemulus is maybe going to win. Despite himself. Stott figures he can run in and get one of those 12-year-olds he big buddies to go back into the passage and empty Pemulus's bucket on the sly before anybody coming off court sees it. Evidence of nervous incapacity of any kind gets noted and logged at ETA. And Stops observed Pemulus's having some kind of vested emotional interest in attending the Whataburger Invitational over Thanksgiving. He thought Mario's lurking around in the cold passage, scratching his poor big head over technical lighting problems, was kind of funny. There will be no lungs or tarps or dim passages at the Whataburger. The Tucson tournament is outside, and Tucson cruised around 40 degrees centigrade, even in November. And the sun there was a retinal horror show on overheads and serves. Though Stott buys quarterly urine like the rest of them, it seems to Pemulus that Stott ingests the occasional chemical that way grown-ups who sometimes forget to finish their cocktails drink liquor, to make a tense but fundamentally okay interior life interestingly different, but no more. No element of relief. A kind of tourism. And Stott doesn't even have to worry about obsessive training like ink or stees, or get sick so often from the physical stress of constant dreams like Trollsch, or suffer from thinly disguised psychological fallout like Ink or Strock or Pemulus himself. The way Pemulus and Trollsch and Strock and Axford ingest substances and recover from substances and have a whole jargony argot based around various substances gives Stott the creeps a bit. But since the knee injury broke and remade him at 16, he's learned to go his own interior way and let others go theirs. Like most very large men, he's getting comfortable early with the fact that his place in the world is very small, and his real impact on other persons even smaller, which is a big reason he can sometimes forget to finish his portion of a given substance. So interested does he become in the way he's already started to feel. He's one of these people who don't need much less, much more. Stott and his opponent warm up their ground strokes with the fluid economy of years of warming up ground strokes. They take turns feeding each other some volleys at net, and then take a couple up, lobs, hitting loose, easy overheads, slow adjusting the idle from half speed to 3/4 speed. The knee feels fundamentally all right, springy. Slow indoor composite surfaces do not like Stott's hard flat game, but they are kind to the knee, which after some days outside on hard cement swells to about the size of a volleyball. Stott feels blandly happy down here on 9, playing in private, way down past the gallery's panel. There's a nourishing sense of impregnable space in a big indoor club that you never get playing outside, especially playing outside in the cold, when the balls feel hard and sullen and come off the stick-strung face with an echoless ping. Here, everything cracks and booms. The grunts and shoe squeaks and booming pocks of impact and curses unfolding across the white-on-green plain and echoing off each tarp. Soon, they'll all go inside for the winter. Stitt will yield and let them inflate the ETA lung over the 16 center courts. It's like a barn-raising inflation day. It's communal and fun, and they'll take down the central fences and outdoor night lamps and unbolt all the posts into sections and stack them and store them. And the Testar and ATHSCME guys will come up in vans and smoking cigarettes and squinting with weary expertise at tubes of flans and draftsman blue. And there'll be one and sometimes two ATHSCME helicopters with slings and grappling hooks for the lungs dome and nacelle. And Stitt and the Lint will let the younger ETAs get the infrared indoor heaters out of the same corrugated shed that disassembled fences and lamps will go in. Leaf cutter ant or Korean-like armies of 14 and 16-year-olds carrying sections and heaters and Gore-Tex swatches and long halo-lithiated bulbs, where the 18s get to sit on canvas chairs and kibitz because they did their leaf cutter long-raising bits at 13 through 16 already. Two Tezcar guys will supervise Otis P. Lord and all this year's conspicuous tech wonks in mounting the heaters and stringing the lights and running coaxial shunts with ceramic jacks between the pump room's main breaker and the Sunstrand grid and booting up the circulation fans and pneumatic hoists that'll raise the lung to the inflated shape of a distended igloo. 16 courts and 4 rows of 4, enclosed and warmed by nothing but fibrous Gore-Tex and AC current and an enormous ATHSCME exhaust flow effectuator that an ATHSCME crew in one of the ATHSCME helicopters will bring in a sling and cable and mount and secure on the lung's nipply nacelle at the top of the inflating dome. And that first night, after inflation, traditionally, the fourth Monday of November, all the upper-class 18s so inclined will crank up the infrareds and get high and eat low-lipid microwave pizza and play all night, sweating magnificently, sheltered for the winter atop Enfield's level-headed hill. Stott stands back in the deuce court and lets his guy warm up his serves, oddly flat and low margin for a nervous touch artist. Stott bloops each return up with severe backspin, so the balls will roll back to him and he can serve them back to his guy, also warming up. The warm-up routine has become automatic and requires no attention. Way up on number 1, Stott sees John Wayne just plaster a backhand cross-court. Wayne hits it so hard, a little mushroom cloud of green fuzz hangs in the air where the ball hit mid-strings. Their cards were too far to read in the sour apple light, but you could tell by the way Port Washington's best boy walked back to the baseline to take the next serve that his ass had already been presented to him. In a lot of junior matches, everything past the fourth game or so is kind of a formality. Both players tend to know the overall score by then. The big picture. They'll have decided who's going to lose. Competitive tennis is largely mental. Once you're at a certain plateau of skill and conditioning, Stit'd say spiritual instead of mental, but as far as Stott can see, it's the same thing. As Stott sees it, Stitt's philosophical stance is that to win enough of the time to be considered successful, you have to both care a great deal about it and also not care about it at all. Stott does not care enough, probably, anymore, and has met his gradual displacement from ETA's A single squad with equanimity. Some ETAs thought was spiritual, and others regarded as the surest sign of dicklessness and burnout. Only 1 or 2 people have ever used the word brave in connection with Stott's radical reconfiguration after the things with the Crohn's disease and knee. Hal Incandenza, who's probably as asymmetrically hobbled on the care too much side as Stott is on the not enough, privately puts Stott's laissez-faire down to some interior decline, some doom-gray surrender of his childhood's promise to adult-gray mediocrity, and fears it. But since Stott is an old friend and a dependable designated driver, and has actually gotten pleasanter to be around since the knee, which Hal prays fervently that the ankle won't start being the size of a volleyball itself at the end of each outdoor day. Hal, in a weird and deeper internal way, almost somehow admires and envies the fact that Stotz stoically committed himself to the oral professions and stopped dreaming of getting to the show after graduation. An air of something other than failure about Stotz not caring enough, something you can't quite define, the way you can't quite remember a word that you know inside. Hal can't quite feel the contempt for Teddy Stott's competitive slide that would be a pretty much natural contempt in one who cared so dreadfully secretly much. And so the two of them tend to settle for not talking about it, just as Stott cheerfully wordlessly drives the tow truck on occasions when the rest of the crew are so incapacitated that they'd have to hold one eye closed even to see an undoubled road, and consents without protest to pay retail for clean quarterly urine, and doesn't say a word about Hal's devolution from occasional tourist to subterranean compulsive, substance-wise, with his pump room visits and Visine, even though Stott deep down believes that the substance compulsion's strange apparent contribution to Hal's eruptant explosion up the rankings has got to be a temporary thing, that there's like a psychic credit card for Hal in the mail somewhere coming, and is sad for him in advance about whatever's surely got to give eventually. Though it won't be the boards. Hal will murder his boards, and Stott may as well be among those jockeying to sit near him, he'd be the first to admit. On two, Hal now kicks a second serve to the ad court with so much left-handed top on it that it almost kicks up over Port Washington's number 2 guy's head. It's clearly carnage up there on show courts 1 and 2. Dr. Tavis will be irrepressible. The gallery is barely even applauding Wayne and Incandenza anymore. At a certain point, it becomes like Romans applauding lions. All the coaches and staff and PWTA parents and civilians in the overhead gallery wear tennis outfits, the white high socks and tucked-in shirts of people who do not really play. Stott and his man play.